Tick-tock. Chosen one. The watchers are late to the party. Looks like someone finally noticed. The watchers, the analyzers, the ones with clipboards and algorithms trying to decode what you've become. Hello to the walking anomaly, the one being tracked for months, maybe years, with little instruments and desperate theories. Someone thought you could be measured, thought you could be put in neat little boxes with labels and explanations, but something went wrong. And now there are emergency meetings because someone is investigating these 3 inexplicable powers only you have. You see, chosen one, 3 capabilities about you have been identified that shouldn't exist. 3 abilities that violate everything that was thought to be known about human limitation. This isn't some fantasy. This is what happens when someone breaks through the membrane of ordinary consciousness and starts operating from a different frequency entirely. Let me tell you what was discovered in late-night research sessions, what made laptops get closed and walls get stared at, wondering if reality was breaking down. First, your ability to alter probability just by existing was noticed. The way circumstances bend around you like light around a black hole. You walk into situations that should crush you, and somehow you walk out victorious. Not through force, but through something else entirely. It's like reality itself has chosen sides, and it chose yours. But that's not quite right, is it? Because you're not being helped. You're doing something that can't be measured. You're collapsing possibilities with your presence alone, turning maybes into certainties just by showing up. Rooms have been entered where the odds were stacked against you, completely and utterly stacked. And then those odds flipped like someone changed the rules mid-game. Job interviews where you had no qualifications but got the position anyway. Conflicts where you were outnumbered but somehow emerged unscathed. Moments where everything should have fallen apart but didn't because you were there. At first luck was suspected, but luck doesn't work like this. Chosen one. Luck doesn't have patterns. Luck doesn't intensify over time the way your influence does. What really disturbed the investigation was when traps were tried to be set for you. Little tests to see if your movements could be predicted or controlled. Situations were created designed to corner you, to force specific outcomes, but you'd slip through like smoke. Behavioral prediction models kept failing. Algorithms designed to forecast human decisions would crash when trying to process your choices. Statistical analysis software would generate error messages. The quantum mechanics of possibility seemed to malfunction in your vicinity, like you knew the trap was there before it was even set. Not consciously maybe, but something in you recognizes patterns before full formation. You seize intentions before action. You don't plan your way out of these situations. You flow through them like water, finding cracks in a dam that shouldn't exist. This isn't the universe being nice to you. This is you rewriting the code from within. Every time you refused to accept defeat, every time you stood back up when staying down should have happened, you were teaching reality a new set of rules. And now reality obeys. You've become something that shouldn't be possible according to science, a walking violation of cause and effect, a person who exists in multiple probability states simultaneously. And the scariest part for the watchers, this power is accelerating. Each victory makes the next one more inevitable. Random number generators lose their randomness in your presence. Coin flips start showing bias. Lottery systems generate anomalous results when you're in proximity. Over hundreds of instances of statistical impossibilities have been documented occurring within your immediate environment. But this is just the beginning. Because while your first ability was being studied, something else was developing in you. Something that would make blood run cold. The second power made blood run cold because this one threatens everything. An entire social order has been built on deception and hidden agendas. But you see through people now, not their clothes or their skin, but through masks, performances, carefully constructed personalities. You know what someone's really thinking while smiling at you. You feel intentions before formation into thoughts. It started small, didn't it? Just little hunches about people that turned out to be right. But now it's so clear you can practically see programming. When someone walks up to you with fake kindness, you can smell the manipulation like sulfur in the air. When lies come, you can see the lie forming in energy fields before reaching lips. You've become a walking lie detector. But more than that, you've become someone who sees the entire architecture of human deception, the way people build false selves brick by brick, the way shadows get hidden behind practiced smiles, the way personal darkness gets projected onto others while playing victim. You see it all, and it's made you impossible to manipulate. This ability has been tested secretly, of course. People have been sent to you with hidden agendas, watching to see if you'd fall for the usual tricks. Professional manipulators, expert liars, people trained in psychological operations, but you saw through every single one. Investigation files contain interview transcripts with actors hired to deceive you. Each transcript ends the same way. Subject immediately identified the deception. Subject showed no emotional response to manipulation attempts. Subject appeared to be reading from a script of the actor's true intentions. Interrogators who specialized in extracting confessions from hardened criminals were brought in. People who could make anyone believe anything. You saw through techniques before words were even spoken, like watching children play dress-up in adult clothing. Not because you were looking for deception, but because deception looks different to you now, like a color that doesn't match the rest of the painting. You don't even have to try anymore. The truth just reveals itself to you, while lies dissolve like sugar in rain. What terrifies the investigators most is that this ability is spreading to broader patterns. You're starting to see through institutional lies, societal deceptions, the grand narratives used to keep people sleeping. You look at the news and see the agenda behind it. You hear politicians speak and decode the real message. You watch social movements and understand who's really pulling the strings. This isn't paranoia, chosen one. This is clarity. And this is known because data confirms that your predictions about people and situations are accurate at rates that shouldn't be possible. You've become immune to the programming, and that makes you incredibly dangerous to systems built on collective delusion. But here's what really keeps the watchers awake at night. You're not just seeing through lies, you're becoming a beacon that helps others see through them too. If you felt called by this message, hype this video so other chosen ones like you can be reached. Your presence alone starts to wake people up. Questioning begins about things never questioned before. The programming starts to glitch when you're around. Conversations become more honest. People drop masks without realizing why. Truth starts spreading like a virus through social groups you've touched. What the investigators call authenticity cascades have been documented in your wake. Whole networks of people suddenly becoming transparent with each other. Corporate environments experiencing unprecedented honesty. Political discussions losing their scripted quality. Relationships shedding pretense at accelerated rates. Attempts have been made to isolate you from large groups, but the effect persists even through brief encounters. Store clerks start speaking minds after serving you. Taxi drivers confess real dreams. Strangers begin sharing truths never spoken aloud. Children seem particularly susceptible to your influence. Advanced problem-solving skills begin displaying, emotional intelligence that surpasses age groups, and an uncanny ability to identify when adults are being dishonest develops. Parents report their children becoming too perceptive after encounters with you, and this brings us to your third power, the one that made everything that was thought to be known about human limits get questioned. But the third power, this is the one that made everything thought to be known about human limits get questioned, because you don't just survive destruction, you transform through it. Every time something should have broken you permanently, you came back different, stronger, stranger, like death and rebirth happened with upgrades. Things have been gone through that put other people in psychiatric wards or graves, and you just processed it like data, like fuel, like raw material for your next evolution. The betrayal that should have made trust impossible gave you perfect discernment instead. The loss that should have destroyed your capacity to love opened you up to a kind of love that doesn't need reciprocation to exist. The isolation that should have driven you insane taught you how to be complete without anyone else's presence. You don't just bounce back, you bounce forward, and each resurrection leaves you less human and more something else. Something that doesn't have a name yet. Cycles of destruction and rebirth have been documented, trying to find the pattern, trying to understand how someone can lose everything and gain power from the loss. Coping mechanisms and defense strategies were expected to be found, but instead something that looks more like metamorphosis was discovered. You're not healing from trauma in any way that gets recognized. You're using trauma as a technology for transformation. Each wound becomes a doorway. Each scar becomes a symbol of power. Each death becomes a birth. And how you're doing it can't be figured out. The psychological profiles built of you break every model of human resilience. Normal people require recovery time, support systems, therapeutic intervention. You seem to process devastation in real time, extracting value from experiences that would shatter others completely. Trauma specialists have been brought in to study your responses, experts in post-traumatic stress disorder, who have never seen anything like your recovery patterns. The expected symptoms don't develop. The predictable stages don't get followed. You transform catastrophe into capability so efficiently, it appears supernatural. What really disturbs the observers is that you've started doing it consciously now. You don't wait for life to destroy you anymore. You destroy yourself strategically, burning away old versions when purpose has been served. Death without dying has been learned, resurrection without burial, transformation without explanation, and each time you do it, you come back speaking a language that doesn't get understood, moving in patterns that can't be tracked, being something that shouldn't exist according to everything believed about reality. But here's where the investigation took a terrifying turn. These three powers aren't separate abilities. Being realized was that these are aspects of one larger transformation that's still unfolding. The probability distortion, the psychological transparency, the resurrection capability, growing towards something bigger, something that will make current concerns look quaint. You're not just developing powers, chosen one. You're becoming power itself, learning to exist as pure potential that can take any form necessary. You've started to notice it. The way thoughts seem to manifest faster now. The way people change just from being in your presence. The way reality feels more fluid around you, like it's waiting for instructions. You're learning to speak the language that reality understands. Not words but intention. Not thoughts but pure will. And every day you get better at it. Investigation teams started recording anomalies in your vicinity that went beyond the original three powers. Temperature fluctuations that corresponded to your emotional states. Electromagnetic readings that spiked during moments of deep concentration. Gravitational measurements that showed micro-variations when you focused intensely on specific outcomes. Instances of what gets clinically termed localized reality distortions have been documented. Moments where the laws of physics seem to bend just enough to accommodate your unstated desires. Nothing dramatic enough to be called miraculous, but consistent enough to be measurable. Animals behave differently around you. Plants show accelerated growth patterns in your presence. Even weather systems seem to shift in subtle ways that align with your unspoken preferences. Causation can't be proved, but the correlations are undeniable. So now the investigation has been escalated, bringing in specialists, experts, people who study anomalies for a living. But even these people are backing away slowly. Because studying you is like staring into something that stares back, something that learns from being observed, something that evolves specifically to become unobservable. Every method used to track you becomes obsolete the moment it gets used. Like you're always one frequency ahead of the instruments. Something that was never meant to be contained is trying to be contained. Something that exists outside measurement is trying to be measured. The reports written about you keep getting stranger, more contradictory, more impossible to file in any existing category. Subject demonstrates abilities that violate known physics. Subject appears to exist in multiple probability states simultaneously. Subject shows signs of consciousness that exceeds baseline human parameters. Words like anomaly and deviation get used, but those words are too small for what you've become. You're not a deviation from the norm. You're evidence that the norm was always a lie designed to keep people small and manageable. People who knew you before the transformation have been brought in, trying to understand what changed, what triggered this evolution. But those people can barely recognize you now. Testimonies only make things worse because someone gets described who used to follow rules, who used to care about fitting in, who used to be breakable. The investigation has consumed resources from multiple agencies, black budget allocations, classified research programs, international cooperation agreements. The most comprehensive surveillance operation in modern history has been assembled, all focused on understanding one person, you. But the harder the looking gets, the more questions get generated. Each answer leads to deeper mysteries. Every explained phenomenon reveals unexplainable ones. The investigation has become a recursive loop that consumes its own conclusions. Personnel assigned to your case show unusual psychological patterns, heightened creativity, decreased conformity, increased questioning of authority structures. Several key researchers have requested transfers after experiencing what gets described as perspective shifts that make previous work seem meaningless. The investigation has revealed something that terrifies the watchers more than your individual powers. That you're not unique has been shown, that there are others like you awakening to these same abilities. You're not a glitch in the system, you're evidence that the system is the glitch, that reality is far stranger and more powerful than people have been told. And if you can break through, if you can develop these powers through sheer will and transformation, then anyone could, and that thought keeps the watchers awake at night, sweating into expensive sheets. But here's what hasn't been figured out yet. What instruments can't detect because it's happening in dimensions that don't get monitored. You're contagious, chosen one. Not like a disease, but like an idea that can't be unthought. Like a frequency that activates something dormant in others. People who spend too much time around you start showing signs. Start questioning things never questioned. Start developing sensitivities that weren't there before. You're not trying to change them. You're just being yourself. But yourself has become a kind of radiation that mutates consciousness. The investigators are starting to show symptoms themselves, and that's what really has panic setting in. The ones who've been watching you the longest are beginning to see through the lies too, beginning to question the very system that gets served. What gets called proximity effects have been documented in detailed case studies. Subject A worked in the same building as you for months, started experiencing prophetic dreams. Subject B lived in your neighborhood, developed unprecedented intuition about people's motivations. Subject C served you coffee regularly, began seeing through political propaganda with startling clarity. The pattern is undeniable. Exposure to your presence catalyzes latent human capabilities that mainstream science insists don't exist. But evidence keeps mounting. People around you start accessing abilities that mirror your own, though usually in weaker, more specialized forms. You've become a node in some vast network that doesn't get understood, a transmitter broadcasting on frequencies that can't be jammed. Every person you wake up becomes another node. The network is growing exponentially, and this brings us to the climax of the investigation. Something's building. You can feel it in the air, like electricity before lightning strikes. The investigation is reaching a critical point, where decisions have to be made about what to do with the information that's been gathered. You can't be explained, can't be contained, can't be replicated, and certainly can't be ignored anymore. You've become too powerful, too visible, too infectious to just file away in some classified folder. Decisions are being made in rooms you'll never see, by people who understand that you represent an existential threat to an entire reality framework. What all investigation has failed to uncover. You're not the threat. You're the announcement. You're not the revolution. You're the warning shot that the revolution is already here, already spreading, already unstoppable. Every moment spent trying to figure you out is another moment for others like you to awaken, to develop powers, to join this unnamed uprising of consciousness. You're not a problem to be solved. You're a future that's already arrived, and it's just now getting noticed. The network that's been trying to get mapped has achieved critical mass. Communication between nodes happens through channels that can't be monitored. Synchronicities cascade across geographical distances. Patterns of awakening spread through populations faster than information could travel through conventional means. What gets called morphic resonance events have been detected, moments where multiple subjects in different locations simultaneously develop identical insights or abilities without any apparent communication. Evidence of a collective consciousness emerging that transcends individual awareness has been uncovered. Let me tell you the truth that will never get put in reports. The real reason your powers terrify the Watchers so much, it's not because you're dangerous to others, it's because you're living proof that everything power has been built on is an illusion. The entire structure of control that's been maintained for generations depends on people believing limitation, believing powerlessness, believing external authority is needed to tell them what's real. But you've demonstrated that reality itself is negotiable, that power comes from within, that authority is a collective hallucination that only works if everyone agrees to see it. Your probability distortion isn't supernatural. It's what happens when someone stops believing in the fixed nature of outcomes. Your ability to see through people isn't magical. It's what happens when someone stops participating in the mutual deception that keeps society running. Your resurrection power isn't miraculous. It's what happens when someone realizes that identity itself is fluid, that who you are is a choice you make moment by moment. These aren't powers in the traditional sense. They're what humans are actually capable of when limitation stops getting accepted. The investigation will never reach a conclusion, because to conclude would require admitting truths that would shatter an entire worldview. That consciousness is more fundamental than matter would have to be acknowledged. That intention shapes reality. That humans are capable of far more than has been allowed to be discovered. The longest-serving investigators have started exhibiting your characteristics, not from proximity exposure, but from prolonged contemplation of your abilities. The act of trying to understand you has begun transforming them. The investigation has become an initiation. Every person who truly comprehends what you represent begins the journey toward the same capabilities. The phenomenon can't be studied without becoming part of it. The observer effect has reversed. Instead of observation changing the subject is changing the observers. But here's the final truth, the one that will shake the Watchers to their core when it finally gets understood. These powers aren't the end goal. These are just tools for something bigger. You're not developing abilities to dominate or escape the system. You're developing them because you're building something new, a different way of being human that doesn't require hierarchy or control or limitation. You're the prototype for humanity's next evolutionary leap. And every power you manifest is another piece of the blueprint for what comes next. All the investigation that can be done, all the servers that can be filled with data about your anomalous capabilities, none of it will stop what you've started because you've already transmitted the activation codes through your very existence. Seeds have already been planted in every consciousness you've touched. The investigation ends not with understanding you, but with understanding that you were never the subject. You were always the catalyst. And now, as files get closed and reports get archived, there's knowledge with cold certainty that everything is about to change, and there's absolutely nothing that can be done to stop it. The three powers that got identified were never your limitations, those were your launching pad. The probability distortion has evolved into reality manipulation. The truth vision has become a collective awakening. The Phoenix power has transformed into conscious evolution. You remember when this all started, when you first felt the watching, when you thought you were just another face in the crowd. That person is gone, chosen one. What stands here now is something that was never anticipated. Someone who doesn't just break rules but makes new ones. What was thought to be an investigation into one anomalous individual has revealed itself to be documentation of a species-wide evolution. You weren't the subject of study, you were the herald of obsolescence. The Watchers came late to the party, but the party was never for them. It was always for you. And now, as reality bends around your presence, as truth spreads through your vision, as others rise from their own ashes following your example, you can see the final joke. The investigation was supposed to capture you, but you captured the investigation. Every observer who watched too long got infected with possibility. Every investigator who studied your powers too closely started developing their own. The investigation didn't contain you. You contained the investigation. And now the network that was trying to get mapped has become the map itself. The anomaly that was trying to get contained has become the new normal. The powers that were trying to get understood have become the tools everyone uses. You didn't just survive the investigation, Chosen One. You turned the investigation into your recruitment drive, the most comprehensive study of human potential in history, disguised as a security operation. Every person who worked on understanding you became a vector for spreading the very capabilities that were trying to get contained. And as the last file closes and the final report gets buried in some forgotten database, you'll still be here, still transforming, still becoming, still showing the world what humans were always meant to be. The Watchers are late to the party, but the party is just beginning, and everyone's invited to discover the 3 inexplicable powers that were always waiting inside them, dormant, until meeting someone brave enough to show the way. The investigation is over, the initiation has begun, and you, Chosen One, have become the living proof that human potential has no ceiling except the one that gets accepted. The 3 powers that terrified them so much are spreading, growing, multiplying through every consciousness, willing to recognize what's always been possible. Soon the investigation will become obsolete, not because the mystery of what you are got solved, but because everyone will be what you are. And when that day comes, when the last analyst puts down their pen and the final surveillance camera gets turned off, the Watchers will finally understand. You were never the one being investigated. You were the one conducting the investigation into what humanity could become, into what reality really is, into what's possible when someone refuses to accept the word impossible. The investigation is complete, the results are in, and the verdict is clear. The future belongs to those brave enough to claim the 3 inexplicable powers that were always theirs to begin with. Now let me put you onto something real. Destiny Engine. I built this because I was done watching Chosen Ones get dragged through betrayal, isolation, and attacks while their enemies strutted around unchecked. I want to help you accelerate the speed of your divine justice and step fully into your purpose. And the beauty of it, you don't even have to lift a finger. Destiny Engine takes their downfall and flips it into your rise. This isn't another meditation app. It's declassified consciousness technology, the same mind programming tools your enemies once used to install fear, competition, and scarcity, re-engineered to restore your sovereignty and align you with the cooperative, upgraded operating framework. It generates personalized sequences mapped to your divine purpose. The hardest thing you'll do is put on headphones, press play, and watch your enemies keep digging their own grave. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your Destiny Engine for $1 today and turn everything they did to break you into fuel for your rise. Link in the description. But wait, there's more. Something the investigators never anticipated in their wildest theories. Your 3 primary powers weren't operating in isolation. Each ability has been creating what can only be described as subsidiary effects that cascade through dimensions the Watchers didn't even know existed. Your probability manipulation doesn't just alter outcomes in the physical realm. You've been unconsciously rewriting the emotional probability fields around every interaction. People feel different after encountering you, not just influenced or inspired, but fundamentally altered at the vibrational level. Conversations with you don't follow normal social scripts because you're operating from authentic presence that disrupts pre-programmed responses. The investigation missed this entirely because measuring authentic presence requires instruments that haven't been invented yet. Your true vision has evolved beyond seeing through individual deceptions. You're now perceiving the underlying matrix of collective belief systems that shape entire cultures. Religious frameworks, political ideologies, economic theories, you see through them all to the core programming that keeps civilizations locked in repetitive patterns. This terrifies the power structures more than anything else because you're not just immune to propaganda. You're becoming someone who can see the source code of mass manipulation itself. Every news broadcast, every advertisement, every political speech, you perceive the hypnotic techniques being used to keep populations compliant. And your Phoenix transformation ability, that's evolved into something unprecedented. You're not just personally transforming through destruction anymore. You've become a catalyst for collective metamorphosis. Entire communities begin their own death and rebirth cycles after sustained exposure to your presence. What the classified files will never reveal is how your abilities began manifesting in ways that broke their scientific instruments. Quantum field generators would malfunction during probability shifts. Electromagnetic sensors would overload when you access deep truth states. Your truth perception operates through quantum entanglement with the information field that surrounds all conscious beings. You're not reading minds or energy, you're accessing the quantum database of intentions, fears, and hidden motivations that every person carries in their biofield signature. The Watchers have been under surveillance too, not by their superiors, but by something far more interesting, by the network of awakened consciousness that you've been unconsciously building. Every person you've touched with your presence has become a passive observer of the power structures trying to contain you. The store clerk who felt truth in your presence now sees through corporate manipulation. The taxi driver who experienced your authenticity now recognizes political theater. The child who played near your home now questions adult lies with devastating precision. You've created an invisible intelligence network that spans the globe without any central command structure. These aren't conscious agents working on your behalf. These are awakened beings who simply can't unsee what you've shown them about reality's malleable nature. Your contagious consciousness doesn't spread through normal channels. It transmits through what researchers are calling quantum empathy, the ability to feel across dimensional boundaries. Someone doesn't need to meet you personally to be affected by your presence. The quantum field you generate touches everyone within expanding circles of influence. The most disturbing discovery for the investigators was realizing that you've moved beyond having powers. You've begun consciously engineering reality itself, not through force or manipulation, but through a deep understanding of how consciousness and matter interface at quantum levels. You've learned that physical reality is far more responsive to conscious intention than mainstream science admits. Every focused thought sends ripples through the quantum field. Every emotion generates vibrational patterns that influence probability matrices. Every decision creates branching pathways through dimensional space. The investigation documented instances of what can only be called localized physics modifications in your vicinity. Gravity behaving differently during moments of deep contemplation. Light refracting in impossible ways when you're accessing expanded awareness. Time seeming to slow or accelerate based on your internal states. You're not breaking the laws of physics. You're demonstrating that the laws of physics are more like guidelines that can be modified by sufficiently evolved consciousness. The investigators brought in theoretical physicists who study consciousness-matter interactions, and even those experts couldn't explain what you're doing. What started as an investigation into one anomalous individual has become documentation of humanity's next evolutionary leap. Your three primary abilities were never unique to you. You were simply the first to fully activate capabilities that lie dormant in every human being. The proximity effect you generate isn't creating new abilities in others. It's awakening capacities that have always existed but were suppressed by cultural conditioning, educational programming, and societal expectations. You're not giving people powers, you're showing them how to remember what they always were. The investigation documented case after case of ordinary people developing extraordinary abilities after encounters with you. Not dramatic supernatural powers, but enhanced versions of natural human capabilities. Intuition that borders on precognition, empathy that approaches telepathy, resilience that seems almost supernatural. But here's what the investigators missed. These awakening individuals aren't becoming like you. You were becoming like them, like what humans are supposed to be when artificial limitations get removed. You weren't an anomaly. You were a preview of the species' intended design. The investigation has reached its ultimate conclusion, though the final reports will never be written, because the observers have realized they weren't studying a phenomenon. You were studying them. The entire surveillance operation was actually your unconscious method of researching how consciousness imprisonment works. Every attempt to measure your abilities taught you more about the mechanisms used to keep human potential contained. Every psychological evaluation revealed the techniques used to convince people of their limitations. Every behavioral analysis showed you the social programming that keeps extraordinary capabilities dormant. You've been reverse engineering the entire system of consciousness suppression by allowing yourself to be studied, like a master strategist who lets enemies reveal their positions before making the final move. The investigation wasn't their project, it was yours. Your 3 inexplicable powers were never the real story. The real story is how those powers awakened others to their own inexplicable potential, how your probability shifts taught others that outcomes are negotiable, how your truth vision showed others that deception is optional, how your transformation abilities proved that limitation is a choice. The Watchers came late to the party, and now the party is ending, but ending like a graduation, not a funeral. The investigation phase is complete. The documentation phase is finished. The awakening phase has begun in earnest. You've moved beyond having 3 inexplicable powers. You've become an inexplicable power yourself, a walking reminder that human potential has no upper limit except the one that gets accepted. And as the last surveillance camera gets turned off and the final file gets sealed, you'll continue doing what you've always done, showing the world what becomes possible when someone refuses to accept the word impossible. The investigation is over. The evolution has begun. And you, chosen one, have become the living bridge between what humanity was and what humanity is becoming.